I was folding my late husband's old work shirts in the utility room. I still couldn't bring myself to donate them, when the house phone rang. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, picked up from the living room. "Robert, can you hear me clearly?" Her voice carried through our thin walls like poison through veins. I was about to leave, give them privacy, but then I heard my name. "Mother Phoebe has to go to a nursing home. Sunset Manor has an opening." My knees buckled. The shirt slipped from my trembling hands. Then Jessica laughed, actually laughed, and said, $890,000, Robert. That's what her house is worth. We could finally be free of all our debts, free of her. Before I continue this shocking story, please take a moment to like and subscribe. My name is Phoebe Morrison, and at 72, I thought I'd seen it all. But that March afternoon changed everything when I discovered my own son and his wife were plotting to steal my home, the very house my late husband James and I built with our own hands 40 years ago. The laundry basket slipped from my hands as Jessica's words echoed through the house. My fingers trembled as I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear every word. "I know it sounds harsh," Jessica continued, her voice sharp and businesslike, the same tone she used when closing deals at her marketing firm. "But we've discussed this, Robert. Your mother is becoming a liability. Last week she forgot to turn off the stove." That was a lie. I'd never forgotten the stove in my life. My heart pounded so hard I thought they might hear it through the walls. Robert's voice came through the speakerphone, weak and hesitant. "Jess, that was just once, and she caught it right away." "Once is enough," Jessica snapped. "Listen, the house is worth $890,000. Do you understand what that means? We could pay off the mortgage, your student loans, the credit cards, everything. We'd finally be free." Free. The word stung like a slap. Free from what? From me? I heard Robert sigh heavily. "But it's her house, Jess. Dad built it for her. Every brick, every board. Your dad is dead, Robert." Jessica's words were cold, clinical. "He's been gone for 3 years. And your mother is sitting on nearly $1 million while we're drowning in debt. It's not fair." My legs felt weak. I sank onto the small stool I kept in the laundry room, my mind racing. James had worked his whole life as a construction foreman, and we'd saved every penny to build this house in South Congress when the neighborhood was still affordable. Now, with Austin's boom, our modest 3-bedroom had become a gold mine. "The paperwork is almost ready," Jessica continued. "My friend at Sunset Manor says they have a beautiful room available. It's one of the best facilities in Texas, Robert. She'll have 24-hour care, activities, friends her age." "How do we even—" Robert started. "Power of attorney," Jessica interrupted. "Once we have that, we can make decisions in her best interest. The house sale will cover her care for years, and there'll be plenty left over for us." I bit my knuckle to keep from crying out. Power of attorney? They were planning to take control of everything. "I've already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Brennan," Jessica added. "He specializes in geriatric psychology. We just need him to document some cognitive decline." "But Mom's mind is perfect," Robert protested weakly. "Is it? She talks to your father's picture every morning. She refuses to use the smartphone we bought her. She still writes checks at the grocery store. These are all signs, Robert." "Signs of what? Being old-fashioned? Grieving my husband?" My chest tightened with rage. "When do we do this?" Robert asked, and I heard the defeat in his voice. My only child, my baby boy, was giving in. "We leave for Miami in 10 days for the conference, remember? I've already put down a deposit at Sunset Manor. When we get back, we'll have the conversation with her. By the end of the month, everything will be settled." The call ended with a click, and I heard Jessica's heels clicking across the hardwood floors above me. I stayed frozen in place, tears streaming down my face. 45 years of marriage, 40 years in this house, raising Robert, nursing James through his final illness, and this was how it would end? Dumped in a nursing home while they cashed in on our life's work? But as I sat there in that tiny laundry room, surrounded by the familiar scent of detergent and fabric softener, something shifted inside me. The tears stopped. My hands steadied. James had always said I was tougher than I looked. that beneath my soft-spoken exterior was a spine of steel. "Well, James," I whispered to the ceiling, "looks like it's time to prove you right." I stood up, smoothed my blouse, and picked up the dropped laundry. If they wanted to play this game, I'd play it better. But first, I had to pretend nothing had changed. That evening, I served pot roast, Robert's favorite since childhood. My hands were steady as I placed the plates, though my heart felt like shattered glass. Jessica swept into the dining room wearing her designer workout clothes, her blonde hair pulled into a perfect ponytail. "Oh, Mom!" she exclaimed with exaggerated sweetness. "This smells amazing. You really shouldn't have gone to all this trouble." I forced a smile. "It's no trouble at all, dear." Robert slouched in his chair, avoiding my eyes. He'd inherited his father's dark hair, but none of his backbone. At 45, he still looked like the guilty little boy who'd broken my grandmother's vase. "Actually, Mom," Jessica said, cutting her meat with precise movements, "I was thinking, wouldn't you enjoy a spa day? There's a wonderful senior special at the Hilton downtown. Massage, facial, the works." A spa day, while they plotted my imprisonment. "That's thoughtful, Jessica, but I'm quite happy with my garden and books." "But you deserve to be pampered." She reached across the table, her manicured nails grazing my weathered hand. "You do so much around here. Too much, really." Robert's phone buzzed. He grabbed it like a lifeline, scrolling intently through nothing important, I was sure. "Robert, honey?" Jessica's voice turned sharp. "No phones at dinner, remember?" He set it down reluctantly, still not meeting my eyes. My boy, who used to tell me everything, who cried in my arms when his first girlfriend broke his heart, couldn't even look at me while planning my betrayal. "Mom," he finally said, clearing his throat, Do you remember where you keep the house papers, the deed and stuff?" My stomach clenched, but I kept my voice level. "Of course, dear. They're in your father's old filing cabinet in the study. Why do you ask?" "Oh, just," he fumbled, "insurance stuff, making sure everything's updated." "How responsible of you," I said, cutting another piece of roast. "Your father would be proud." Robert flinched. "Good." Jessica jumped in smoothly. "It's important to have all these documents organized. You never know when you might need them." "Indeed," I agreed. "James was always very particular about paperwork, everything filed just so." We ate in uncomfortable silence for a few minutes. I noticed Jessica kept glancing at me, studying me like I was a problem to be solved. Was my hand shaking? Was I confused about anything? Every move I made was being cataloged as potential evidence of decline. "I think I'll have some wine," I announced, standing up. "Would anyone else like some?" "Mom, are you sure that's—" Robert started. "I'm 72, not dead," I said firmly. "I can certainly handle a glass of Merlot with dinner." As I poured the wine in the kitchen, I heard them whispering. When I returned, they fell silent, fake smiles plastered on their faces. I wanted to throw the wine in Jessica's perfectly made-up face, but instead I raised my glass. "To family," I said, looking them both in the eye. "The most precious thing we have." They clinked glasses with me, and I saw Robert's hand tremble slightly. At least he still had enough conscience to feel guilty. Jessica, however, smiled like a shark who'd just spotted dinner. 3 days passed before I found my chance. Jessica had a client meeting downtown, and Robert was at his office, or so they claimed. These days, I couldn't trust anything they said. I waited 20 minutes after Jessica's BMW pulled out of the driveway, then made my move. Robert's home office was just down the hall from their bedroom. The door was usually locked, but I still had the master key from when this was purely our house, before they'd moved in, temporarily, 2 years ago, to save money. Another lie, I now realized. The laptop sat open on his desk, the screen dark but not off. I touched the trackpad and it came to life. No password. Robert had always been careless about security, despite working in software development. The email was right there, minimized at the bottom of the screen. My chest tightened as I read the subject line. Sunset Manor, admission documents for P. Morrison. I clicked it open, my hands trembling. Dear Mr. Morrison, Thank you for your deposit of $5,000 to secure placement for your mother, Phoebe Morrison. As discussed with your wife, the monthly rate of $8,500 includes full care, meals, and activities. The attached power of attorney documents must be completed before admission. We understand Dr. Brennan will be providing the cognitive assessment next week. Please note that our memory care unit has additional fees should that level of care be required. Best regards, Patricia Hoffman, Admissions Director, Sunset Manor. $5,000. They'd already paid a deposit with money they claimed not to have. I took photos with my phone. James had insisted I learn to use it for emergencies, and this certainly qualified. The next email made my blood run cold. It was from a realtor named Derek Chen, with the subject, Comparative Market Analysis, 4247 Riverside Drive. Our address, my home. The attachment showed comparable sales in South Congress. Houses smaller than ours selling for $850,000, $920,000, even $1.1 million. Derek's note was enthusiastic. Jessica, based on these comps, we could easily list at $890K for a quick sale or push for $950K if you can wait 30-60 days. The market is hot right now. I scrolled through more emails, each one another twist of the knife. Jessica had researched signs of dementia to document. She'd looked up how to get power of attorney, elderly parent, Texas. There was even a draft email to Robert's cousins in California explaining that Mom's health is declining rapidly and we need to make some difficult decisions. Then I found the worst one. It was from Jessica to her sister in Florida, dated just yesterday. Everything's falling into place. The old woman has no idea. Robert's finally on board. I told him it was this or bankruptcy. Once we have the house money, we can flip that condo in downtown Austin I've had my eye on. Conservative estimate, we'll clear at least $400K after paying off debts. Not bad for 2 weeks of work, right? The old woman. That's all I was to her. I heard a car door slam outside and quickly minimized everything, my heart racing. Footsteps on the porch. Robert was home early. I slipped out of his office and down the hall to my room, closing the door just as I heard his key in the lock. "Mom?" he called out. "Just resting, dear," I called back, proud that my voice didn't shake. I sat on my bed, staring at the photos on my phone. The evidence was all there, but what could I do with it? Confront them? They'd just accelerate their plans. Fight them in court? With what money? They'd already started the narrative that I was declining mentally. Then I remembered something James used to say. "Phoebe, honey, the best defense is a good offense. Don't wait for the fight to come to you." I pulled out the old address book from my nightstand, the leather one James gave me for our 20th anniversary. Eleanor Hayes's number was there, written in James's careful handwriting. She'd been his star apprentice when he taught night classes in construction management, before she'd gone on to law school. She'd spoken at his funeral, called him her mentor. I dialed the number, praying it still worked. "Hayes Law Office, how may I help you?" "May I speak with Eleanor Hayes, please? This is Phoebe Morrison." A pause. "Mrs. Morrison? James's wife? Of course, let me put you right through." Eleanor's voice was warm, concerned. "Phoebe, what a wonderful surprise. How are you?" "Eleanor, I need your help." The words tumbled out. "It's about the house and Robert, and I don't know who else to trust." "Are you safe? Are you in immediate danger?" "Not physically, but Eleanor, they're trying to put me in a home and take my house." Silence for a moment. Then Eleanor's voice turned professional. "Can you come to my office tomorrow, 10 a.m.? "Yes, but I'll need to be careful. They're watching me." "Then don't drive yourself. Take an Uber to the Starbucks on 6th Street. I'll have my assistant pick you up there." "Phoebe?" "Yes." "James saved my life once, did you know that? Not literally, but he believed in me when no one else would. I've got your back." I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Jessica and Robert thought they were dealing with a helpless old woman. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I told Jessica I was going to my book club. She barely looked up from her phone, just waved dismissively. "Don't forget your pills, Mom." I hadn't forgotten my pills in 40 years of managing various medications, but I smiled sweetly. Of course, dear. The Uber driver was a chatty young man named Carlos, who reminded me of my nephew. As we drove through Austin's changed landscape, high-rises where bungalows used to be, I thought about how naive I'd been. 2 years ago, when Robert and Jessica moved in, I'd been grateful for the company. James had just passed, and the house felt so empty. I thought I was gaining a family. Instead, I'd invited in wolves. Eleanor's assistant, a sharp-dressed young woman named Keisha, was waiting at Starbucks as promised. The drive to Eleanor's office was quick, and soon I was sitting across from the woman James had mentored 20 years ago. She'd aged gracefully, her black hair now streaked with silver, her eyes still sharp behind designer glasses. "Tell me everything," she said, and I did. I showed her the photos from Robert's computer, told her about the overheard phone call, the lies about my mental state, the deposit already paid. Eleanor took notes on a legal pad, her expression growing darker with each detail. "The bastards," she muttered, then caught herself. "Sorry, Phoebe." "No, you're right. That's exactly what they are." Eleanor pulled out a thick folder. "I need to ask you something important. After James passed, did you update your will?" "No, I haven't thought about it." "And the house? Whose name is on the deed?" "Both mine and James's. We never changed it after he died." Eleanor smiled for the first time. "That's actually good news. Texas is a community property state. The house automatically became fully yours upon James's death. Robert has no claim to it whatsoever unless you give it to him. But they're trying to get power of attorney, which requires either your consent or a court declaring you incompetent. And Phoebe, you're sharp as a tack. No legitimate doctor would declare you incompetent based on using checks and talking to your husband's photo." She pulled out another document. "But here's the really interesting part. James came to see me 6 months before he died. He was worried about exactly this scenario." My breath caught. "He was?" "He never told you because he didn't want to poison your relationship with Robert, but he set up something called a right of first refusal clause. Basically, if you ever decide to sell the house, you must first offer it to a specific trust he established. The trust's beneficiary is you, and upon your passing, it goes to the Austin Habitat for Humanity." I stared at the document. There was James's signature, clear as day. He knew? He suspected. Robert had been asking him about the house value even then. James wanted to protect you without creating family drama. Eleanor leaned forward. "But Phoebe, we can do better than just protect you. We can turn the tables completely. Are you interested?" "What do you have in mind?" "Sell the house. Now. Before they even know what's happening." My heart skipped. "Can I do that?" "It's your house. Free and clear. You can do whatever you want with it. I know a realtor, Marcus Thompson, completely trustworthy. In this market, with a quick cash buyer, we could close in 2 weeks." 2 weeks? That's when they'll be in Miami. Exactly. They leave, and when they come back, the house is sold, you're moved out, and there's nothing they can do about it. I thought about the house, about all the memories in those walls, James building the deck with his own hands, Robert taking his first steps in the living room, the garden I'd tended for 4 decades. "It's just walls and wood," I said finally. "James isn't there anymore, and apparently neither is my son." Eleanor reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "I'm going to call Marcus now. We'll get photos taken this weekend while they're out. Cash buyers often waive inspection, so we could close fast. The question is, where will you go?" "I don't know. I haven't thought that far. There are some beautiful townhomes in Hyde Park. Smaller, manageable, but still yours. You could buy one outright and have plenty left over for a very comfortable retirement." The plan was taking shape, and for the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe. "Eleanor, what about the money? If I sell, we'll set up a new bank account in your name only at a different bank. The sale proceeds will go directly there. Robert and Jessica won't even know it exists." "This feels like war," I said quietly. Eleanor's expression hardened. They fired the first shot, Phoebe. You're just defending yourself, and trust me, James would be cheering you on. As Keisha drove me back to the Starbucks to catch another Uber home, I felt like a different person. Not the helpless old woman Jessica saw, but the fighter James had married. The girl who'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, who'd raised a son while building a business, who'd held her dying husband's hand and promised to be strong. That promise was about to be tested. Marcus Thompson arrived at Eleanor's office the next day, looking like he'd stepped out of a real estate magazine, silver-haired, immaculately dressed, with an honest smile that reminded me of James. Eleanor had vouched for him completely. He specializes in sensitive situations, divorces, estates, family conflicts. He knows how to be discreet. "Mrs. Morrison," Marcus said, shaking my hand firmly. "Eleanor's told me your situation. I want you to know that what your son and daughter-in-law are attempting is not just morally wrong, it's elder abuse. You're doing the right thing." We spread out the paperwork on Eleanor's conference table. Marcus had already pulled comparables for the neighborhood, and his eyes lit up as he showed me the numbers. "Your house is a gold mine," he said. "Original hardwood floors, that huge lot, the established garden in South Congress. We could list at $950,000 easily." "But we need speed, not top dollar," Eleanor reminded him. "Right. Here's what I propose. I have a client, the Thompson family, no relation to me, who've been looking for exactly this kind of property. They're relocating from California, cash buyers, can close in 10 days. I think they'd offer $920,000 as is." $920,000. James and I had built the house for $47,000 in 1984. "There's one problem," I said. "How do I get the house ready for showing without Robert and Jessica knowing?" Marcus smiled. "We don't need traditional showings. I'll bring the Thompsons by this Sunday when your son and daughter-in-law are out. One viewing, that's all. If they like it, and they will, we'll have an offer by Monday." "This Sunday they have brunch at the country club," I said. "They're gone from 11 to 3 like clockwork." "Perfect. Now, let's talk about where you'll go." Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed me listings for townhomes in Hyde Park. One caught my eye immediately, a 2-bedroom with a small garden, built in the 1940s but completely updated. The price was $385,000. "That leaves you with over $500,000 in the bank," Eleanor calculated. "More than enough for a very comfortable retirement without depending on anyone." "What about my belongings?" I asked. 40 years of accumulation? "I recommend a moving company that specializes in quick, quiet moves," Marcus said. "They can pack and move you in one day, the day Robert and Jessica leave for Miami." Eleanor pulled out a calendar. "They leave on the 15th. The house closes on the 17th. By the time they return on the 22nd, you'll be settled in your new place, and the Thompson family will be in the old house." It was like watching a chess game where I finally had the winning moves. But there was still one thing bothering me. What about when they find out? They'll come after me, try to say I was incompetent when I sold it. Eleanor smiled grimly. "That's the beautiful part. I'm recording everything. Your clear, lucid decision-making, the fair market price, the proper legal procedures. If they want to challenge it, they'll have to admit in court that they were planning to institutionalize you for money. How do you think that will look?" The next few days required Oscar-worthy acting. I continued my routine, morning coffee while talking to James's photo, knowing Jessica was watching, tending my garden, occasionally forgetting small things to keep them complacent. Meanwhile, I was secretly organizing 40 years of life into keep, donate, and trash piles, all while they were at work. Robert grew increasingly nervous as the Miami trip approached. Thursday night at dinner, he cleared his throat multiple times before speaking. "Mom, while we're gone, if you need anything—" "I'll be fine, dear," I said, patting his hand. "You two enjoy your conference. What is it about again?" "Digital marketing innovations," Jessica said smoothly. "Very boring stuff." Boring. Like planning to lock away your mother-in-law. Friday morning, I met with Marcus at a coffee shop to sign the purchase agreement for the Hyde Park townhome. The seller accepted immediately. Cash offers were rare for smaller properties. I'd have my new home in 10 days. The Thompsons are thrilled about your house, Marcus told me. They have 3 kids and have been looking for exactly that neighborhood, that style. They promise to maintain your garden. That made me smile. At least my roses would be loved. Saturday night, Robert and Jessica packed for Miami. I helped fold Jessica's designer clothes, listened to her complain about airline baggage fees, even made them sandwiches for the flight. "You're so sweet, Mom," Jessica said, and for a moment, she almost sounded sincere. "We really appreciate everything you do." "Family takes care of family," I replied, looking her straight in the eye. She had the grace to look away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, soon to be someone else's house, touching walls, remembering. Here was where Robert had marked his height every birthday. There was the dent from when James had tried to move the refrigerator alone, the kitchen window I'd stood at thousands of times, watching the seasons change in my garden. "Am I doing the right thing?" I whispered to James's photo. As if in answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Found more emails. They've been planning this for 8 months. Jessica has already picked out a condo to buy with your money. Stay strong." 8 months. While I was cooking them dinners, doing their laundry, believing we were a family, they'd been plotting my disposal like I was an old appliance. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood. Robert hugged me goodbye at the door, a quick, guilty thing. "Take care, Mom. We'll talk when we get back." "Yes," I said. "We certainly will." As their car disappeared down the street, I stood in the doorway of the house I'd called home for 40 years, knowing it was the beginning of the end. Or perhaps the beginning of a new beginning. Standing there watching them drive away, I remembered something James told me when Robert was a teenager and going through his rebellious phase. He said, "Phoebe, sometimes the hardest thing about being a parent is knowing when to let go and when to hold your ground." I never thought I'd need that advice when Robert was 45 and plotting against me. If you're watching this and you've ever felt betrayed by family, please know you're not alone. Hit that like button if you believe in standing up for yourself, no matter your age, and subscribe to hear more stories about real people facing real challenges. Now, let me tell you what happened when the Thompsons came to see the house. At exactly 11:15 that Sunday morning, Marcus's BMW pulled into my driveway, followed by a silver minivan. The Thompson family climbed out, David and Sarah, both in their late 30s, and 3 children ranging from maybe 6 to 12. The youngest, a girl with pigtails, immediately ran to my garden gate. "Mommy, look at all the flowers!" she squealed. "Careful, Emma," Sarah Thompson called, then turned to me with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry. She loves gardens." "Don't apologize," I said, opening the gate. "Gardens are meant to be loved. Would you like to see the roses? They're my special hybrid, James Morrison roses, named after my late husband." As I showed little Emma the flowers, explaining how to tell when a rose is happy, I caught Sarah wiping her eyes. Later, as we toured the house, she pulled me aside. "Mrs. Morrison, Marcus explained your situation. I want you to know we'll take wonderful care of your home. We've been looking for a place with soul, with history. Every house we've seen has been flipped and stripped of character." David was equally respectful, asking about the house's history, admiring James's craftsmanship. "This built-in bookshelf, is this original?" "James built it for our 10th anniversary," I said, running my hand along the smooth wood. I'd complained about not having enough space for my books. "It's beautiful work. We'd never change it." Their middle child, a boy named Tyler, discovered the attic access. "Can I see?" he asked politely. "Of course." I led them up to the finished attic space that had been Robert's teenage sanctuary. "This was my son's room when he was your age." Tyler's eyes went wide. "This is so cool. Dad, can this be my room?" Watching this family fall in love with my home eased the ache in my chest. They saw what James and I had built, not just equity to be extracted, but a place to raise a family. "We'd like to make an offer," David said after they'd seen everything. "Full asking price, $920,000, cash, 10-day closing." Marcus handled the paperwork while I served coffee and Sarah's homemade cookies she'd brought as a gift. "We always bring cookies when we view homes," she explained. "It helps the kids behave, and it's nice to share food in a place we might live." These people understood home in a way Jessica never had. The next week flew by in a blur of secret preparations. The moving company Marcus recommended was incredibly efficient. They arrived Monday morning, after Robert and Jessica had left for work, and began the surgical process of extracting 40 years of life. "Just the items marked with blue tape," I instructed the foreman, a kind man named Jerome. "Everything else stays with the house." I was leaving all the furniture. Let the Thompsons decide what to keep. I took only personal items, photos, James's tools, my grandmother's china, the quilt my mother made, and of course, all important documents. Everything fit into a small moving truck. Eleanor had arranged everything at the bank. The new account was opened, the wire transfer scheduled for closing day. She'd also helped me set up automatic bill pay for the new townhome, a new cell phone plan Robert couldn't access, even a new email address. "You're basically disappearing from their radar," she explained. "When they realize what's happened, they won't be able to track your finances or control anything." Wednesday, I signed the closing papers for the Hyde Park townhome. The key felt strange in my hand, a new beginning at 72. That afternoon, I drove over alone to see it empty. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and there was a small garden plot already planted with herbs. It was perfect. Thursday night, I had my last dinner in the old house. I'd sent Robert and Jessica a text saying I was staying with my friend Martha for a few days. Martha, who'd actually been dead for 2 years. Not that they'd ever bothered to learn about my friends. They responded with emoji hearts and "have fun." Friday morning, closing day, I walked through the empty house one last time. The movers had done their job. It looked exactly as it had, just without my personal touches. In the kitchen, I left a bottle of wine for the Thompsons with a note. "May you have as many happy years here as we did. The garden especially loves coffee grounds and classical music. Phoebe Morrison." Then I left my own note for Robert and Jessica, sealed in an envelope marked with their names, placed precisely on the kitchen counter where they always dropped their keys. The closing was at 2:00. I signed my name with a steady hand, officially transferring ownership of 4247 Riverside Drive to the Thompson family. The wire transfer was confirmed, $920,000 deposited into my new account. "Congratulations, Mrs. Morrison," Marcus said, shaking my hand. "You've done the hardest part." "No," I corrected him. "The hardest part is coming." That evening I sat in my new living room, boxes stacked around me, watching the sunset through unfamiliar windows. My phone was turned off. I didn't want to know when Robert and Jessica's plane landed, when they got home, when they found the note. Eleanor had installed cameras at the old house's entrance, perfectly legal since I'd owned it at the time of installation. We'd watch their reaction together tomorrow. I unpacked James's photo first, placing it on the mantel. "Well, honey," I said to his smiling face, "I did it. I fought back. I hope you're proud." The silence in the new space didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. No footsteps overhead calculating my worth. No whispered conversations about my mental state. Just me, my memories, and my freedom. I poured myself a glass of the good wine I'd been saving, a 2015 Bordeaux James had bought for our anniversary, but never got to drink. "To new beginnings," I toasted the empty room, "and to justice served cold." Saturday morning, I woke early in my new bedroom, disoriented for a moment by the different angle of sunlight. Then I remembered. I was free. Robert and Jessica would return this afternoon, and everything would change. I made coffee in my new kitchen, smaller, but somehow more mine than the old one had felt lately. The herbs in the garden were thriving, and I made a mental note to plant tomatoes next week. I had all the time in the world now. At noon, Eleanor called. "They're on their way back from the airport. Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready since I heard them planning to throw me away," I said. "I'll pick you up in an hour. We'll watch from my office. I have the camera feed set up on my computer." As I waited for Eleanor, I thought about Robert as a child, how he'd run to me with every scraped knee and broken toy. When had that trusting little boy become a man who could betray his mother for money? Maybe it was when he met Jessica, or maybe the seeds were always there, waiting for the right conditions to grow. It didn't matter now. What mattered was that I'd refused to be their victim. Eleanor's office had the atmosphere of a mission control center. She'd set up her laptop on the conference table, the screen showing 4 different camera angles of my former home's entrance. Keisha had made popcorn. "Seems appropriate for the show," she'd said with a grin. "The new owners won't be moving in until Monday," Eleanor explained, "so we have the weekend to document everything." At 3:47 p.m., Jessica's BMW appeared on screen. My heart pounded as I watched them pull into the driveway they thought they owned. "Here we go," Eleanor murmured. Robert got out first, stretching from the flight. Jessica was on her phone, probably already planning renovations with my money. They grabbed their luggage from the trunk, laughing about something. The casual cruelty of their happiness made my stomach turn. Robert reached the front door first, key in hand. We watched him insert it into the lock. It didn't turn. He tried again, jiggling it. Nothing. "What the hell?" we heard him say through the audio feed. Jessica pushed past him. "You're doing it wrong." She tried her key. Same result. "Did Mom change the locks?" Robert's voice was confused. "Why would she—" Jessica stopped mid-sentence. The for sale sign in the yard had been replaced with a sold sign, which they'd just noticed. "What is that?" Jessica's voice went shrill. They ran to the sign, Robert pulling out his phone to call the realtor whose name was listed. Marcus Thompson, of course. We couldn't hear that conversation, but we could see Robert's face go from confused to angry to absolutely devastated in the span of 30 seconds. "The note!" Jessica suddenly screamed. "She said she left a note!" They ran back to the door, and that's when they saw the envelope I'd taped there, which they'd missed in their panic about the keys. Robert tore it open with shaking hands. Eleanor had helped me write it, making sure every word was legally bulletproof while emotionally devastating. Through the camera, we watched Robert read aloud. "Dear Robert and Jessica, by the time you read this, the house at 4247 Riverside Drive has been sold to a lovely family who will actually cherish it. The proceeds have been deposited into my personal account, which you have no access to. I heard your phone conversation 2 weeks ago, Jessica. Every word about putting me in Sunset Manor, about taking my home, about the old woman being a liability. I have recordings of your subsequent conversations and copies of all your emails, including the one where you called me the old woman and calculated how much money you'd make from my imprisonment. The $5,000 deposit you paid to Sunset Manor is non-refundable. Consider it a lesson in counting chickens before they hatch. I am not senile. I am not incompetent. I am not a victim. I am a 72-year-old woman who built a life with her husband through hard work and sacrifice, and I refuse to let anyone, including my own son, steal that from me. Robert, I loved you more than life itself. I would have given you anything if you'd just asked. But instead, you chose to conspire against me, to plot my institutionalization for financial gain. You became someone I don't recognize, someone your father would be ashamed of. I have moved to a new home. I have a new phone number. I have a new life. If you want to be part of it, you'll need to earn that privilege through genuine remorse and changed behavior. Family therapy is non-negotiable. Jessica is not welcome until she can look me in the eye and apologize without calculating my net worth. The house is gone. The money is mine. Your plan failed. I am not sorry. Your mother, when you deserve me, Phoebe Morrison. P.S. Your father's tools, which you never learned to use, have been donated to Habitat for Humanity, where they'll actually build homes for families who need them, not tear them away from old women. Robert's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the porch steps, the letter crumpling in his fist. Jessica snatched it from him, reading it again, her face cycling through disbelief, rage, and panic. "She can't do this!" Jessica screamed. "That's our house. We live there." "Lived," Eleanor corrected quietly, though they couldn't hear her. "Past tense." Jessica pulled out her phone, presumably to call me. The number was disconnected. She tried again and again. "The bitch!" she shrieked. "That manipulative old bitch!" Robert looked up at her with something like clarity in his eyes. "She's not the manipulative one, Jess." "Are you seriously taking her side right now? She just stole $900,000 from us." "It was never ours," Robert shouted back, standing up. "It was her house. Dad built it for her. And God, Jess, we were going to put her in a home. My mother. What kind of people are we?" "Smart people," Jessica shot back. "People who understand that resources should go to those who can use them, not sit with some old woman who talks to her dead husband's picture." The slap happened so fast, even Eleanor gasped. Robert's hand connected with Jessica's cheek. Not hard, but the shock of it silenced everything. "That's my mother you're talking about," he said quietly, "and my father. And I just lost both of them because I listened to you." He walked away then, down the driveway, pulling out his phone to call an Uber. Jessica stood on the porch, hand on her cheek, screaming after him about their debts, their plans, their future. The future they'd planned to build on my bones. Watching my son walk away from Jessica, from the house, from everything they'd schemed for. I won't lie, it broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Sometimes love means letting someone face the consequences of their choices, even when that someone is your own child. If you're still watching, you're probably wondering if this was too harsh. But let me ask you, what would you do if you discovered your own family was planning to lock you away for money? Comment below with your thoughts. I read every single one. And please, if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of courage and justice. Now let me tell you about the confrontation that changed everything. 3 days passed before Robert found me. I knew he would. He was still my son, still smart enough to figure things out when he applied himself. Eleanor had warned me he might show up at her office, and sure enough, Monday morning, her receptionist called. "There's a Robert Morrison here. He says he's your son. Should I call security?" "No," I said, surprising myself with my calm. "Send him to the coffee shop across the street. I'll meet him there." I chose a table by the window, ordered my usual Earl Grey, and waited. When Robert walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight in just 3 days. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his clothes were wrinkled, so unlike the polished software engineer he usually presented to the world. He stood by my table, uncertain. "May I sit?" I nodded. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. My son, who'd taken his first steps into my arms, who'd cried on my shoulder when his high school girlfriend broke his heart, who'd stood beside me at James's funeral promising to take care of me. "Mom," he started, then stopped, tears flowing freely. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry you got caught? Or sorry for what you planned to do?" He flinched. "Both. Everything. Mom, I don't even know who I became. When did I become someone who could do that to his own mother?" "When you married Jessica," I said flatly. "Don't blame her entirely. I made my choices. I let her convince me, but God, Mom, the debts. We're drowning. My student loans, the credit cards, the mortgage on a house we couldn't afford. Jessica said it was the only way. There's always another way, Robert. You could have asked for help. You could have been honest. Instead, you plotted to institutionalize me." He broke down completely then, sobbing in the middle of the coffee shop. Other patrons stared, but I didn't care. Let them see what betrayal looked like. "Dad would hate me," he choked out. "Yes," I agreed. "He would." That stopped his tears. He looked at me with such pain that for a moment I wanted to comfort him. But I held firm. "What happened with Jessica?" I asked. "She's staying with her sister in Florida. She's filing for divorce, says I ruined everything by not managing you better." He laughed bitterly. "Managing you, like you're a problem to be solved instead of my mother." "What do you want from me, Robert?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing. I deserve nothing from you. I wanted to see you, to tell you in person how sorry I am, and to give you this." He pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. "The deposit to Sunset Manor," he explained. I emptied my personal savings to pay you back. It's not much, but I don't want your money, Robert. Then what? What can I do? How can I fix this? I studied my son, really looked at him for the first time in years. Underneath Jessica's influence, underneath the greed and the betrayal, was there still the boy I'd raised? Therapy, I said. Individual, and if I ever agree to it, family therapy. You need to understand how you got to this point, or you'll do it again. I've already started, he said quickly. Emergency session yesterday. The therapist says I have issues with boundaries and financial anxiety that made me vulnerable to... He stopped. No, that's making excuses. I made terrible choices. I'm working on understanding why. Where are you living? Mark's couch. From work. Mom, I know I have no right to ask, but can I see you again? Not the house, not the money, just you? I thought about James, what he would want. He'd always believed in second chances, in redemption, but he also believed in consequences. 1 coffee a month, I said. Public place. You come alone. If you miss one, or if you bring Jessica, or if you ask for money, we're done forever. Understood? Yes, God, yes, thank you. I'm not doing this for you, I clarified. I'm doing it for the little boy who used to help me plant roses. Maybe he's still in there somewhere. Robert reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. He is, Mom. I promise. He is. As I left the coffee shop, I felt lighter. Not forgiving. That would take time, maybe forever. But hopeful that my son might find his way back to being someone his father wouldn't be ashamed of. That afternoon, I got a call from Marcus. Mrs. Morrison, I thought you should know. The Thompsons moved in today. They asked me to tell you the roses are blooming beautifully. I smiled, picturing little Emma running through my garden. Her garden now. Good. Gardens need children. There's something else. Jessica Morrison called our office. She wanted to know if there was any way to reverse the sale, claimed you were mentally incompetent when you signed. And? I referred her to Eleanor Hayes, who sent her a cease and desist letter along with copies of all the documentation proving your complete competency. Haven't heard from her since. That night, in my new home, I cooked dinner for one. Salmon with dill, roasted vegetables, a glass of good wine. I ate at my small dining table, looking out at my herb garden, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The doorbell rang just as I was cleaning up. Through the peephole, I saw a young couple with a baby. Mrs. Morrison, we're your neighbors, Tom and Beth Chen. We wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. They'd brought cookies and a potted orchid. We stood on my porch chatting about the neighborhood, the best grocery stores, the community garden down the street. Normal, kind conversation with no hidden agendas. If you ever need anything, Beth said, shifting the baby to her other hip, we're right next door. My mother lives with us. She's about your age and would love a friend to walk with in the mornings. After they left, I sat with the orchid, thinking about roots. Sometimes, to truly bloom, you had to transplant yourself to better soil. 6 months later, I stood in my herb garden harvesting basil for the dinner party I was hosting. My new life had developed a rhythm: morning walks with Mrs. Chen, afternoon volunteering at the library, monthly coffee with Robert, who hadn't missed a single one. The therapy was working. I could see it in his eyes, clearer now, no longer calculating my worth, but actually seeing me. He'd gotten a second job to pay off his debts properly, moved into a small apartment, and started rebuilding his life without Jessica's expensive tastes driving him. Mom, he'd said at our last coffee, I've been thinking about Dad a lot, about what he'd say. What do you think he'd say? That a man takes responsibility for his choices. That family isn't about what you can get, but what you can give. He'd paused. I want to give back, Mom. Not money. I know that's not what this is about. But time, presence, the son you deserved all along. Tonight's dinner party was a test of sorts. Robert was coming, along with Eleanor and her husband, the Chens from next door, and surprisingly, the Thompson family. Sarah Thompson had reached out last month, inviting me to see the house's transformation. "We've kept everything that matters," she'd assured me. "But we'd love your advice on the garden." Visiting had been harder than expected. Seeing another family's photos on the walls, their furniture in the rooms, children's toys scattered on floors where Robert once played, but also healing, watching life continue in those spaces, seeing my roses thriving under Sarah's care. "Mrs. Morrison!" Little Emma had run to me with a bouquet of my James Morrison roses. "Look, I grew these myself. Mommy says you taught the roses how to be beautiful." "No, sweetheart," I'd told her. "The roses always knew. I just gave them room to grow." Now, as my guests arrived for dinner, my small townhome filled with laughter and conversation. Eleanor brought wine, the Chens brought homemade dumplings, the Thompsons brought a photo album they'd made of the garden through the seasons. Robert arrived last, carrying a wooden box. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it after dinner," he said quietly. "Please." The meal was lovely. Simple food, genuine conversation, no pretense. Mrs. Chen and I shared stories of our grandchildren, hers real, mine the neighborhood kids I'd unofficially adopted. Eleanor regaled us with tales of her most ridiculous legal cases. David Thompson asked Robert about software development, and they found common ground in coding languages. After dessert, my famous peach cobbler, Robert stood up. "I wanted to say something," he began, nervous. 6 months ago, I nearly lost my mother because of greed and stupidity. I plotted something unforgivable, and she had every right to cut me out of her life forever." The room was silent. "But she didn't. She gave me a chance to earn my way back. Not to her money, that's gone and good riddance, but to her heart, to the family I threw away for dollar signs." He picked up the wooden box. "Mom, I've been taking woodworking classes. I needed to learn what Dad tried to teach me all those years ago. This isn't much, but I made it myself." Inside was a small wooden frame holding a photo I'd never seen. James and me at Robert's college graduation, all 3 of us laughing at something off camera. But it wasn't just any frame. The wood was carved with tiny roses, each petal detailed and delicate. "The wood is from the old oak that fell in the backyard last year," Robert explained. "The Thompsons saved me a piece. I thought, Dad's hands helped plant that tree. Now it's holding our family photo." I ran my fingers over the carved roses, feeling the hours of work, the patience it must have taken. "It's beautiful, Robert." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I know that might never come. I'm just asking to keep trying, to keep learning who I'm supposed to be." Eleanor raised her wine glass. "To second chances." "To family," Mrs. Chen added, "both blood and chosen." "To gardens that bloom after the storm," Sarah Thompson said. We toasted, and I felt James's presence so strongly it took my breath away. Not in the old house, but here, in this moment, in the son who was finally becoming the man we'd raised him to be. Later, after everyone had gone home except Robert, who was helping with dishes, he asked, "Do you think Dad would forgive me?" I dried the last plate, considering. "Your father believed in redemption through action, not words. You're taking action. That would matter to him." "And you? Can you forgive me?" "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "Every day I'm working on it. But Robert, I love you. I never stopped loving you, even when I had to protect myself from you." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I love you too, Mom. The real you, not what you could do for me." As he left, he turned at the door. "Same time next month for coffee?" "Wouldn't miss it." I watched him walk to his car, his old Honda, not Jessica's BMW, and drive away. Then I went to my mantel and placed the carved frame next to James's photo. "Look, honey," I whispered. "Our boy is finding his way home." The roses in the frame seemed to glow in the lamplight, carved by hands that had finally learned the value of patient, careful work, of building something beautiful instead of tearing it down for parts. That was 2 years ago. Today, Robert and I have rebuilt something real, not perfect, but honest. He married a wonderful woman named Grace who teaches kindergarten and values family over finances. They're expecting their first child, and yes, I'll be there as Grandma should be, on my terms, in my own home, with my dignity intact. If you're facing family betrayal, remember, loving someone doesn't mean accepting abuse. You deserve respect at every age. What would you have done in my situation? Comment below. I love hearing your perspectives. If this story touched you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your power. Remember, self-love isn't selfish, it's necessary.